Everybody, it's another rainy evening in the Napa Valley as we head into the winter season, and there are some big changes coming up for YouTube and content creators. I am your host, Napa. Yes, that's my nickname. Our channel used to be called Bad Drivers of Napa Valley, so the name Napa kind of stuck around. So if you're tuning in right now, you've probably heard of COPPA and this huge legal mess going on. COPPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act that was passed way back in 1998, and that is going to be enforced on YouTube content creators starting on January 1st. In a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by a lawyer. In the meantime, let me finish giving you the background. So there's a lot of panic, hysteria, and controversy surrounding this move by the Federal Trade Commission to begin enforcing the rules, and with the burden of compliance being put on those of us that upload videos on YouTube. Sparing you all the extreme nitty-gritty details of what this is about, I'm going to attempt to summarize the background of this. So COPPA was passed back in 1998 with the intent of preventing the online collection of data of children under the age of 13 without the consent of the child's parent or legal guardian. At the time, the law had a smaller, more limited scope. But in 2013, the scope of the law was expanded as they revised the definition of data collection and expanded the parental consent requirements as well as other requirements. Fast forward to recently, and YouTube was accused of allegedly violating COPPA and agreed to pay $170 million as a settlement to the FTC and the New York Attorney General. And then there was a stipulated order signed by a federal judge as part of the settlement. Includes the requirement of YouTube to implement a system that allows content creators to identify whether their videos are directed to children under 13. And that is exactly what YouTube just did. There's a system now where when you upload a video, you're asked to select whether your video is for kids or not. Only two options: for kids, not for kids. And by January 1st, all your videos, including your past ones retroactively, must be indicated whether they are for kids or not. YouTube is implementing an AI system that will automatically sweep its own platform and select for kids on videos that it thinks is for kids. But we shouldn't rely on that system to get it right. We still do have a legal obligation to make sure our videos are correctly marked as for kids or not. YouTube's AI systems and algorithms, as I think a lot of us know, have historically been unreliable. So basically, YouTube had to do something to make it right, but a lot of people are arguing that they're just passing the burden on to us content creators. That YouTube could have done and could now be doing a lot better to prevent the burden from coming down on us. One thing is for sure, they could have just not screwed up in the first place, but too late now. The FTC made it very clear that they are putting content creators on the hook for compliance, as well as YouTube itself. But there may be some legal problems with holding content creators accountable under COPPA, which we'll be discussing with my guest in a bit. So, why does this matter? If you're a content creator, if you upload videos to YouTube, why should you be concerned? Well, like I said, the FTC is clear about their plan to enforce COPPA compliance on content creators. If you saw the FTC press conference last summer, the commissioner said that they can fine content creators up to $42,000 per video that was marked not for kids, that the FTC felt should have been marked for kids. The commissioners also mentioned a sweep where they claim they're going to audit all videos on YouTube for compliance. Yes, we're talking billions of hours of videos. I watched the entire 45 minutes of that press conference, and one of the things that really irked me was Commissioner Andrew Smith. I have to say, his speech came off as quite insensitive to content creators. He said this enforcement action will be like, quote, shooting fish in a barrel, with the, quote, content creators being the fish. He went on to brag about this historic settlement amount and his rather menacing narrative. And his mannerism said it all. He even bobbled his head back and forth a bit as if he couldn't quite contain his excitement over these threats of consequences to content creators. And I have to say, his demeanor just made me sick. My personal impression of the press conference was that it came across as scare tactics. There's no doubt that content creators must comply with COPPA until a court rules otherwise, if that ever happens. But the level of fear mongering felt amped up beyond realistic levels. Now, that's just my impression. You still do need to take it all seriously and make sure you comply. But that leads to the next problem. How? How do you comply? So YouTube came out with a video outlining basic criteria for what's considered directed to kids, which basically mirrored the guidelines on the FTC's website for compliance, but that wasn't good enough. It still left an enormous gray area to where it could be argued that most videos on YouTube could be considered for kids. This had a lot of people really upset and panicked, rightfully so. And the YouTube CEO ended by telling everyone to seek a lawyer's advice to ensure compliance, which I have to say made people panic even more since legal counsel is expensive. And the video really didn't do anything to answer our questions about what is or isn't for kids. So YouTube was caught in a difficult position with that because they aren't lawyers and they don't know any better than we do as far as what precisely entails for kids. And then after some high-profile content creators went to Washington, D.C. to speak with FTC commissioners, they then made the guidelines a little bit less ambiguous. They gave some examples and said that the context of a video matters. And that seemed to have eased a lot of concerns for the YouTube content creator community. But it's still not a good situation for a lot of content creators. And there are still gray areas for content that's highly subjective as to what's for kids. Content creators who spoke with commissioners even said the FTC told them that the ambiguity was intentional. But let's back up slightly. So why not just select for kids for all your YouTube videos to err on the side of caution? Well, the problem is that removes personalized ads, so your ad revenue will sharply drop by as much as 90%. People won't be able to comment on it. Your video won't be available to be added to a playlist, and it may also negatively affect how people can even discover your video. So after a lot of back and forth between major content creators and the FTC, the commissioners have come back and said that a $42,000 fine is unlikely, at least for your average content creator who isn't wealthy and who hasn't committed an egregious violation of the law, and that they're not as interested in pursuing gray area cases where your video may or may not be considered as directed at kids. It certainly doesn't mean that they can't pursue those cases if they ever decide to. If your video may be appealing to kids but not directed at kids, they have said they're not focusing on those cases. They're at least going to start with clear-cut violations where there's little doubt that it violated COPPA law. So there's been at least one bit of hope here, and that is the FTC did open a web page to allow the public to comment on all this, and commissioners are reading the thousands or millions of comments they got. The period of public comment ended about 10 days ago, so it'll be interesting to see if their enforcement plan changes or if the law ends up being reworked. And we'll talk more about that with our guest. Along with all the panic and outrage over this, there's also been a flood of misinformation and even conspiracy theories. Yeah, some are claiming that Disney conspired with the FTC to crack down on YouTube content creators as a way of getting more viewers for themselves. There have been some other far-fetched conspiracy theories. So what this is not about, as some people are claiming it is about, this has nothing to do with censorship or controlling what content we can watch, though the side effect of all this will impact what's available to watch. This isn't about preventing children under 13 from seeing inappropriate content, although one of the unintended consequences is that because children's content will be withering away, children may wind up watching more on the side of adult content. What this is about is preventing websites from collecting children's data and their internet history without their parents' consent. Then we get into the controversy over whose responsibility it is to control what the children are subjected to online. Many are saying that the parents should be the ones, and that if they don't want their children's data collected, don't let them on the internet by themselves. And I have to say, I actually know a lot of parents that don't allow their children to have mobile devices or allow them to go online by themselves. So many people feel it is unnecessary for Big Brother government to be getting involved here. Folks, this is a very complicated issue with a lot of moving parts, different facets that relate to each other in some way, and there's no way we can cover everything involved. So we'll try to hit the main points. All right, without further ado, I'd like to welcome this evening's guest, business lawyer Richard Hogue from the Hogue Law Firm in Michigan. He's dissected the COPPA law in great detail. He's done a ton of research, and he has a series of videos on YouTube, including videos on this subject. If you haven't seen his videos yet, I highly recommend you check them out. I put a link in the description to his channel. All right. Good evening, Richard. Thank you for joining tonight.
Good evening. Yeah, telling me everyone can see and hear you is mildly terrifying. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Busy with the holidays. Been a little hectic, as you can imagine, but doing good. How about you?
Oh, yeah. I've just been reading 90 or so Star Wars reviews, just a typical Wednesday. It's all good.
Well, that's good. Were you able to hear everything I spoke about?
I did. I heard your whole introduction. Absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Is there anything that I said that you feel needs correction? Because obviously I think you're going to be a lot more versed on this than I am.
No, I don't think so. Actually, I think it was a pretty good summary. On my channel, a lot of people wound up asking for something like an easy to digest summary of COPPA, which is, virtually impossible.
It is.
But I did a 5-minute case file, which is essentially everything I can teach in 5 minutes or less.
Right.
And I do recommend that. I think you mirrored a lot of what was said there. The basic gist is this is a law that was written in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
When the internet was maybe a little bit less well known, especially by the legislature. And it was written with pretty specific kind of terminology. And we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, in your questions. But website operator, means something. And, whether or not it means YouTube content creator is up for debate. But the law wasn't really written to contemplate that. And how could it? Right. I mean, things like YouTube and Facebook and others like it weren't really a gleam in someone's eye. And so COPPA is being applied now, as we see, in a way that, maybe is appropriate. I have my doubts on that personally, but that the Federal Trade Commission wants to assert is appropriate. And it's based on a law that's old, on a rule that's less old, but that tries to expand it to cover what the internet was becoming. And now let's say, broad reading of what that rule might afford the FTC and authority. So, it's a position where I feel for everybody really on the internet, but it's obviously come up with YouTube content creators the most, as trying to comply with this thing. I've got a lot of emails. I've got a lot of DMs since I started talking about this in virtual legality.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are just, hey, I want to comply. I want to do what YouTube tells me to do. I want to do what the FTC tells me to do. Not because I'm worried they're going to find me or cancel me or whatever, but because I want to be a good law-abiding citizen.
Right.
And Rick, can you tell me? And one of the things I have to tell them is no. For any number of reasons. One of the things I should say as part of this broadcast is, as you probably know, whether you follow virtual legality or not, this isn't official legal advice. We're talking about things in a kind of generic basis. Legal advice requires a very specific knowledge of your facts and circumstances. Have to engage a law firm, hire me, that kind of thing. And so I like to get out there with my channel and on broadcasts like this and hopefully get some information out there. But nobody should take this as specific legal advice to their situation. And if you are significantly concerned about your channel, your content, your website, whatever it might be, I do recommend that you at least talk to a lawyer. There are good ones out there that'll chat with you for a half hour.
Yeah.
I think the unfortunate part as we go through the questions that you're going to ask me here is you're going to get a lot of what lawyers like to say and why lawyers are so hated, which is it depends.
It depends, right?
It depends. And to truth be told, this is a scenario where it's not just an interpretation of a statute on your side that it depends on. You are trying to read the mind of commissioners that are going to change not just in disposition, but in composition. The Federal Trade Commission is not going to look the same in 3 years.
No.
And so who knows, right? And so that's part of the conversation.
Right. So actually, let me I was going to save this question for last, but since we touched on that, as far as, because everyone's saying, get a lawyer, get a lawyer, get a lawyer if you're unsure. So where can content creators seek legal advice? Is there a website they can go to help them locate lawyers that are familiar with the latest in the COPPA issue? Can they hire you?
So, eventually maybe. I've actually had a couple people approach me with that. It's the year end. So I'm a transactional attorney. I do business law, mergers and acquisitions. I do privacy. I do company stuff. So that's why I've been talking about COPPA. But at the year end, a lot of folks try to get their deals done before 12/31. So I'm closed for new clients for right now.
Okay.
But you say, hey, all the best marketing happens when you're not taking on new clients.
Yeah.
No, I think you can go. I always recommend trying to find somebody local to you. It's often very useful to actually go see somebody in person. You can get a better feel for whether they're, frankly, trying to rip you off or not. Lawyers have a reputation for a reason. There's a lot of good ones out there that want to help your business and want to help you grow. There are a lot of bad ones. So I do recommend, having that conversation and trying to have a chat with somebody and making sure you have a good feel for them and they for you.
Yeah.
I will tell you this. I can't give official legal advice. If any given lawyer tells you that they can guarantee one way or the other on something that you ask them with respect to this issue, I don't hire that lawyer. Okay. That's not what they can do. They can go, they can evaluate, they can say, okay, so you've got animated characters here, but they're all swearing or they're all talking about death and divorce. Maybe we can do some things with this balancing factor test and we can talk about your relative risk ratio. But nobody can say, I guarantee you the FTC won't drag you in front of a court because they can't.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, that's great advice there. So you touched on this in your videos. Let's see, your series was called, remind everybody what your series is called.
Sure. I have the Hogue Law YouTube channel, and the primary series started last November. We call it Virtual Legality. And it is primarily based on talking about business and legal issues through a pop culture lens. That I was having a little bit of trouble talking to people in kind of the theoretical world of corporate governance and fiduciary duty. And I was at the time sponsoring a video game podcast out in California, which some of your viewers might be familiar with, called the Easy Allies. And in so doing, they asked me a couple of legal related questions to fan games and things related to the video game industry. And that became a little bit popular. So I started Virtual Legality, basically using that as the premise. So mostly what I do on that channel is talk about things in the news, like when Spider-Man was being fought over between Sony and Disney. And, you can kind of see the strings behind a contract negotiation. So I was talking to people about what was happening and why you were seeing various leaks in various directions. And I promised them that Spider-Man would be back in the MCU, which eventually he was. And so I do that. And that led to a number of things. One of the things that we talk about a lot is corporate messaging and terms and conditions in various, especially tech-related fields, because those are the ones that are constantly changing. So we've looked at the Facebook terms and the Twitter terms. And then a number of people said, hey, YouTube just put up this warning. I think it was mid-November, late November, and said, hey, you have to click all these boxes. What's going on? And I said, well, we can talk about COPPA. We can talk about that settlement from back in September. And then this became 15 or 20 videos in the last month on this.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. So you did talk about this quite a bit. But if we can sort of summarize, it's hard to do because there's a lot to say about it. But are we from your own, based on your own legal opinion, are we the content creators actually liable for compliance under the law? Which kind of leads to this question I'll ask after that. But
sure. So here's the current situation. You've got COPPA, and I think you did it exactly correctly in your introduction, where you said it's a data collection law. All of this relates to data collection.
Right.
And it says, if you've got something that is either directed to children or that that a child is watching, and for these purposes, we're going to use the US definition, which is 12 and under.
Right.
And it's a child watching, then you can't collect their data unless you go get their parental consent and you put a notice on your website that says what you're going to do with it. I mean, it's not the world's hardest thing to comply with. And the situation that we've got right now is that YouTube, this multinational company with however many channels it has and videos up and uploaded every day, says basically, we don't want to do that. We don't want to put up a notice. We don't want to go get verifiable parental consent because while maybe not the hardest thing in the world, on the margins, it is something that will cost them money. And so they say, we're not going to do that. And then the Federal Trade Commission says, oh, well, you're using persistent identifiers. That's wrong under COPPA because you're collecting this data. And we're going to sue you. And you're ultimately going to settle and give us the $170 million. It was to the FTC and the state of New York.
Yeah.
And then the FTC says, yes, we can also sue content creators because the law says if you are a website operator or operator of an online service and you collect this data, then you're in violation of COPPA. And it all comes down to website operator, where essentially the Federal Trade Commission's theory of the way YouTube operates in order for them to assert this authority is that your channel, youtube.com/Hogue Law, is a website that you operate.
Right.
And so you operate that website and you have tacitly agreed to allow YouTube to do whatever the heck it's doing. And YouTube is in fact collecting that data. So if you don't tell them to stop it, which you can do right now by saying essentially made for kids, if you don't tell them to stop it, we're going to hold you to be a website operator and potentially liable under COPPA. Right. Now, in my personal opinion, which is not a legal opinion and goes against what the Federal Trade Commission is putting out in its press conferences, that is a very attenuated way to use the website operator definition. And in my opinion, it's designed solely to try to get at these people because there's a lot of money there. There's not a lot of money necessarily in going after the Hogue Law YouTube channel, but there is in going after Hasbro, going after whatever Disney's got up there. You know, these various other multinational companies that were perhaps trying to skirt some of these things, knew what YouTube was doing. And, you know, that Hasbro and YouTube were exchanging emails about the fact that they were aiming some of their stuff at between 2 and 5. And so the Federal Trade Commission comes in and says, these are clearly bad actors, give us money. Right. And then in their press conference, they go and they say, we can come after content creators. Now, the only other thing I would add to this, and I think people skip this, I've covered it in a couple of my videos, is that the Federal Trade Commission is also under pressure from the other direction. Yes. One of the reasons you saw in the press conference that kind of stance that I think you described as making you sick is that for a long time, a lot of groups, the kind of for the children protection advocates, regardless of how you feel about that, have been coming after the Federal Trade Commission saying you're not doing enough. And in particular, you're not doing enough under COPPA. There's a number of other laws that they don't think the Federal Trade Commission is doing enough under, but that you're not doing enough under COPPA. And so one of the things you saw in that press conference was that saber rattling to say, we know you're going to complain that we only fined YouTube $170 million, which obviously that's a lot to you and me. It's not a lot to YouTube. No. And so people were saying, well, you know, YouTube essentially, you know, did one of those things where you park in a place that's difficult to park because, you know, the parking ticket is going to be less than it would cost to go find a place to park. And so it's a cost of doing business, and that YouTube is not going to be chastened by this. And the Federal Trade Commission was at its press conference saying, no, no, no. They are very chastened, and they know we can come after their entire business model. We're going to do a sweep of their whole site to see if they're not in compliance. We're going to put all these other requirements on them. And $170 million is a lot of money. It's bigger than anything we've ever done under COPPA. That's the kind of background of that press conference. And, you know, the content creators look at it and they say, oh, that's scary. That's not right. And I agree with them. But the stance that was taken, that was assumed by the Federal Trade Commission, has a different motivation. I'm not saying they won't come after content creators. I'm saying there's subtext to the text. Right.
Gotcha. So there seems to be some disagreement, obviously, between the FTC and legal experts and us, content creators, about the definition of operator. But moving forward, as far as defining, more clearly defining operator, as it relates to content creators, or maybe in a way that removes our liability as content creators, what will that take? Will it take a court case of a content creator being sued and then it goes into case law?
Well, so right now what's being discussed is what's in the rule. So if your viewers don't know, what happens is you've got this law, and the law can only have so many words in it because the legislator has a lot to do. And so they're going to go to the next law. And in various sections in a law that they pass, as they did in 1998, it says some commission, in this case, the Federal Trade Commission, they're going to go and they're going to promulgate, which is the fancy legal word for make, rules under this law to give it meaning, because the words don't necessarily give guidance to the actual people of the country. And so just after 1998, Federal Trade Commission puts together some rules. They go through the administrative law process, which requires a comment period and things of that nature. And then they revise it in 2013 to expand the definition of operator to what they are now claiming they can use. Now, they haven't used it since 2013 because they know it's on not super strong ground. And they expanded it in 2013, and then they called for comment here in the summer of 2019. Now, I will be candid with you. When they called for comment, it was not to narrow the scope of COPPA. Doesn't mean they won't, because they got a lot of comments, because what happened over the fall was that YouTube was mobilized, the content creators were mobilized, and I think they put in some tens of thousands of comments, which is just ridiculously unusual for a rule comment section. It doesn't mean they'll care about that, but when they called for comments, it was on the back of getting this big settlement with YouTube and seeing it as a moment when they could expand their authority. And if you go and you look at the questions that they asked for people to comment on, it was all basically about, is this strong enough? Should we make it stronger?
Right.
And I think there might be at least a pause in that. That might be the effect of all the comments, but I would strongly suspect it's not going to be narrowed. So operator is going to continue to be in the rule in all likelihood, and I can't make guarantees on this, but it's going to continue to be in the rule. You are the operator of a website because you've got /Hogue law there, and you have outsourced a third-party data collection process to YouTube, and so maybe we can get you that way. Now that rule is just essentially an assertion of the Federal Trade Commission. So if they were to bring a claim, they would send you a letter and they'd say cease and desist, and also we're going to fine you X amount of dollars. And you'd say sue me, and if they sued you, they would have to go prove their case in court. And the rules provide a guideline, and you should comply with it if you can, because that guideline is important. But one of the things you can say is, Judge, this is not what a website operator is. For instance, complying with COPPA means putting up a policy of what I do with your data, and then going and getting verifiable parental consent and contacting the parent. YouTube content creators are in a unique position of not being able to comply with COPPA if they wanted to, right? They never touch the data. They never see the data. They don't know who Bob is or who Bob's parents are. And so there's no way for them to comply with it. Now, the Federal Trade Commission can come back and say, that's not our problem. You outsource this service to somebody, and you should tell them to not do that if you can't otherwise comply. But that completely misses the actual power dynamic between a content creator and YouTube, and between any content creator and any website on the internet. I mean, that's kind of the cross discussion here. So I don't think it's going to get narrowed. It hasn't been challenged in court. I will also tell you it's unlikely to be challenged, primarily because nothing goes to court. Something like 90% plus of things get settled, because oftentimes one or both parties has an incentive to not set that precedent. Right? You can see the Federal Trade Commission doesn't want to lose a case on this point, because a lot of power goes away. So if it looks like they might, they just drop the complaint. Right.
Gotcha. And so, of course, this comes down to, who ultimately should bear responsibility for children's exposure to data collection online. Who do you think should be responsible? And this is kind of a leading question here, so I apologize about that. But
who do I think should be responsible? I think you probably heard in some of my videos that as a thesis, I don't have an issue with COPPA. I don't have an issue with, if you go and you collect data from kids, you go have to get their parents' permission, because they're minors. They can't enter into contracts, which is essentially what you're doing. You're licensing your data away. And so go get that parental consent.
Yes.
In terms of who should be responsible, I think the actual website operator should be responsible. I think it should be defined to be who has administrative control over the operations of the website. And so YouTube should definitely be responsible. And I think the net effect of that is if they are responsible for everything that goes on their site, I think they have to be more careful about things. They probably have to do audits and things like that. And maybe it still isn't perfect because COPPA exists. But you don't have people that are putting up cat videos or Lego videos or model trains concerned that the Federal Trade Commission is going to come and sue them out of existence, because they shouldn't have that risk. The ordinary citizens of the United States that are putting up these relatively pleasant videos. I've enjoyed a lot of stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Shouldn't fear the ambit of government coming if they deign to do so. And that they should come after YouTube. And then, there are other ways for YouTube to handle that. There could be a contractual provision that says if you don't tell us the right things, you might have an indemnification to us. I mean, there are other ways to go around the horn here where, you might have a contract issue with YouTube, but a contract issue with YouTube is not great. It's also not a federal lawsuit.
Correct. Because I mentioned earlier in my monologue before I brought you on, I do know quite a few parents actually that have successfully restricted their own kids from internet access in terms of accessing whatever they want, whenever they want. So the parent has to be present and they aren't given mobile devices to just run with.
Sure.
In that case, the parent's doing a great job of being the first line of defense against data collection. So a lot of people are arguing, hey, maybe this really should be on the parents. Let's have less government intervention here if the parents would just do their job. This is a common argument being made right now.
Sure.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, from a legal perspective, my first thought is that's not what the law says.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So one thing that comes across on my channel pretty often is, aim your complaints where they are owed, which is to say, if you're the Federal Trade Commission or you're the advocacy groups or whomever, don't try to change the language of the law by changing the rules. That's essentially cheating. You have to go through the legislative process to change the law. And right now, the law says if you're a website operator, you collect this data, you're liable if you don't get the parent's permission. And yes, I don't think that is necessarily reflective of the way we live our lives in 2019. And I think you could write it so that essentially if a child is accessing the internet on a parental bought device, that the consent should be assumed. But that's not what it says right now. And so I'm not against advocating for that change if people want to advocate for it. I think the law actually, in terms of things that are 20 plus years old, isn't that bad. I could point to a number of other laws that are worse.
Yes.
But the way it's being interpreted and essentially having folks threatened on YouTube and elsewhere is not appropriate. So
this is a sticking point.
Yeah.
And the definition of operator.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So this enforcement sweep, Commissioner Smith did a good job of just short of wagging his finger at the camera, like an authoritarian parent, did a really good job of, getting my anxiety level up.
Sure.
Of course, I'm not one to just jump to conclusions and just start panicking. Oh no, this is the end. Oh, I'm screwed. It's kind of like taking a deep breath. Okay, this could be scare tactics. Let's not jump ship here. And actually, a lot of that has happened already. A lot of people have panicked. A lot of major content creators have jumped ship before any other details have come out. They just saw the press conference, saw some of the videos that surfaced online of other content creators spreading misinformation, conspiracy theories, which I'll get to again a little later, but just not doing anybody any good with all of that. And then people jumping ship and calling it quits, deleting all their videos, setting them all to private, and basically screwing themselves over before they even have a chance to see how any of this plays out.
Yeah.
But he did a good job of scaring a lot of people, and as I said, the insensitivity, the tone of his voice and his choice of words did come off as quite insensitive to content creators. But
and there's no question about it.
Right.
And that kind of saber rattling is not unusual for federal agencies, I have to say, regardless of their authority. So that's one of the things. I believe my first video is about that, is about the Federal Trade Commission and the weaknesses of their case.
Yeah.
But it's one of the reasons that virtual legality exists, is that, I do talk about these things and I do try to get out there with, at least what I feel is a fairly objective take on these kinds of things. I try to give voice to certainly people's concerns, but also put out a few of the fires, which is, certainly if you just said everything is for kids, you're going to be fine. The issue is that YouTube has made that essentially draconian and a death knell in terms of turning off everything on YouTube if you do that.
Yes.
So there are ways to think about this. I think I also did a video on, one kind of potentially partial shield is there's an interest-based advertisement button buried, I think 6 menus deep. And you can turn that off and potentially find yourself in what is called the internal operations of a website exemption under COPPA, which essentially means that YouTube can collect data from kids as long as it's for internal operations. And if they aren't using it for behavioral advertisement, which is all YouTube has said they are doing with it right now, the issue, of course, being that since we aren't actually website operators, God only knows what YouTube will do with it tomorrow, that if you hit that button, you should have at least a modicum of protection, because one of the ways the Federal Trade Commission is trying to say content creators are website operators is because that button's available to them. And so if you hit that, I have a whole video that says, maybe you're a little bit more protected. I had a number of people ask me, is there an effectiveness to putting a disclaimer at the front of my video? As I said at the start of this, it depends. If you put a disclaimer up in front of a series of old Barney episodes, that's not going to matter. But if you're in the middle road, it's something that could, one of the things that I don't know that you necessarily talked about in your intro, and if you did, I apologize, is that this all attaches to whether or not you are directed to children. And the definition of directed to children is so vague that that's where people are really struggling. That's where, that's the reason I say a lawyer can't give you a guarantee, is because the primary definition here is the commission shall consider your subject matter at a later time and determine whether you were directed to children.
Right. Well, the good news, I think, that's come out of all this back and forth discussion, with major YouTubers going to Washington, D.C., speaking with the commissioners in person, and also phone call conversations. And they've come back and said, well, we're not really going to pursue edge cases or the maybes. We're gonna go after the clear violators, the ones that are in clear violation. So if what I'm hearing is the truth, then that does take a lot of pressure off of us, but we still need to be mindful, of course.
That's absolutely right. And one of the things that I said in those early videos that I did was exactly that, which is primarily my experience as a business lawyer is working with the SEC and the IRS, not as much with the Federal Trade Commission, but these federal agencies tend to do things in a similar way, and that is low-hanging fruit first. So, so when we're talking about COPPA violations, certainly the Federal Trade Commission will be looking at the big pockets of money, the people that are hitting not for kids, even though they're only putting up old 80s, My Little Pony episodes.
Yes.
And that's who they're going to be aimed at first. Now, in my opinion, I'm a video gamer. That's a lot of my entry point for virtual legality, as a matter of fact. But I think gaming is going to prove a specifically thorny issue for YouTube. Because legislators in general don't know what to do with it in terms of whether it's for kids. And I suspect the robots, whenever they come out, are going to be mislabeling video games all over the place, right? That video games are animated characters by definition, so it's going to be an issue. Yeah,
so YouTube's AI may flag these as for kids, and then it's going to be up to the content creator to come back and go, and select, okay, no, it's not for kids.
For kids, right.
And actually, I think one of the conversations, again, I'm just going off of my memory here, and based on my presumption of the truth of what content creators have said in their conversations with FTC commissioners, is that they've even come back and said, well, video games, even those that are appealing to children, may not be covered under COPPA law. And covered is kind of a weird word. I would think a better one would be liable under the law. That would make more sense to me.
Yeah, everybody's not always careful about these things. It's one of those things that is pretty funny to me, because the line that YouTube is made to say in the consent order is that you must comply with COPPA, which isn't wrong, right? But it completely belies the operator question. So what I would say is, any given U.S. citizen has to comply with all U.S. federal laws.
Right.
It's a matter of whether or not it means something to you. So when COPPA goes and says a website operator can't collect data, it matters whether or not you fall under the bucket website operator. It doesn't mean you are allowed to not comply with it. Right. It matters whether it actually covers you.
Right.
And when we're talking about things like, is your content covered? The answer is yes. The longer answer is, but does your content wind up falling into the directed to children bucket?
Right. Right. Yeah, and boy, that what a confusing mess this all is. But
Welcome to
at
law.
least
Yeah, I feel
welcome
like
to
I've been
law.
doing a law school class on my channel for a couple months now.
It seems like we're all going to be lawyers on COPPA after this is all over with.
Yeah,
Especially
no.
those of us that are really diving into this, But I want to talk about the sweep for a second.
Yeah.
So this audit, this major audit that they claim they're going to do,
Yes.
again, we're coming back to the saber rattling, which I think was a genius way of coining that. When I saw that video, I'm like, yes, that is a perfect way to put that. This is like saber rattling, and how he claims that they do have the manpower to screen every minute of every video. And see, folks, we're talking about billions of minutes of content. Like, I forget what the actual statistics are, but I think there are like a million hours a day uploaded, or some crazy high number, because YouTube is obviously the largest video sharing platform in the world.
Yeah.
So, and it's grown. I mean, it's been around since 2004 or 6 or something like that. Um, I'm very skeptical of the claim that they're going to be able to, that they have the manpower to screen. I mean, we're talking trillions of minutes probably all told.
Yeah, as well you should be. There's a couple things I would say about that statement, and I haven't looked at it in a little while. But one is, I think that statement can be read as aimed at YouTube as much as
Right.
content creators.
Yes.
It comes right after the content creator kind of discussion, but I think it should be read as much of a, we're going to make sure you're complying, YouTube, as content creators are complying.
Right.
I also think when we talk about a sweep, I think it will be greatly technologically aided, if at all. And I have my doubts that it will be anything but the really largest potential fish to catch.
Yes.
There's just not a lot of reason to spend taxpayer dollars on evaluating the 3 subscriber, 400 videos of their cat's channel.
Right.
And I'm glad those exist. I think YouTube's
Absolutely.
a fun place with some goofy stuff.
Yes.
But the FTC is not going to go get money from that person and their channel.
No, they won't.
And
be
one of
able
the things
to.
we talk about on my channel, and that came up a lot, is that $42,000 number.
Yes.
They really do have to keep it so that it is proportionate to quote unquote justice for whoever they're trying to penalize. It is not supposed to kill you and make you lose your house. Now, I can't make
Right.
any promises for the government, but it is, when we're talking about tiny channel, tiny penalty. What the easiest way to think about it is they could get $170 million out of YouTube, which makes $4 billion or whatever it is. That's about the right kind of thought process of what they can get from you and your revenue. So if you make 33 cents on YouTube, they may be able to get a penny. And when they can get a penny, they're not going to go for it, because that costs more to make the phone call than to go get the penny.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. Gosh, I was gonna see, what was I gonna say in response to that. My memory fails me right now. The
No,
older
that's all
you
right.
get, you start forgetting stuff.
No, it's totally fine. I can go on. The Federal Trade Commission coming after people is, I think, the real story of this whole thing. And one of the things that popped up, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it is the fact that as a result of what YouTube did with what they elected to do, what happens when you hit 4 kids, and how they've kind of used their messaging on this, they really did wind up mobilizing the content creators to make all these comments on COPPA, to do all these things that are most likely helpful to YouTube in the long run. One of the kind of side stories here is that one of the questions in the COPPA comments request is whether or not a general audience platform should be able to rebut certain presumptions that the FTC would make about who's watching their stuff,
Right.
if they do kind of a de minimis checking out of what they're actually putting on their website. So right now, YouTube doesn't or didn't do that, especially before these buttons existed. And one of the things the Federal Trade Commission found out was oh, the way we wrote our rules makes it clear that YouTube has every incentive to go hide in the corner and not accept any emails from anybody and not look at anything, because they have what's called an actual knowledge standard for liability. And so we're going to nail them on the fact that they exchanged emails. And we're going to nail them on the fact that they actually had an internal program that designated some of their channels as for kids under 7. But if they didn't do those things, we would have nothing. And so the FTC looked at it and said, well, now that everybody knows that's how we could get you, Facebook and Twitter and everybody else that might be collecting data goes and says, okay, we're not accepting any emails anymore. We're not looking at any about tabs. We're going to go hide over here. So maybe we should rewrite COPPA to say, okay, if you actually go and you look at this and you police it a little bit, then you can rebut the presumption that we should attach liability to you. That's something that YouTube most definitely wants.
Right.
And that's part of the story of what's happening with the comment period. It's an analysis I did of their messaging. They put up a blog post just before the comments went public. I want to say on like December 9th. And they put up a blog post that talked all about that their number one responsibility is, or their number one priority is responsibility. And it's very clear that they are focused on getting the content creators mobilized, but not so upturning the COPPA apple cart that they can't get that rule change that they would really, really like.
Right. Yeah. So actually, what you said did jog my memory. I'm going to be turning 41 here in a month, and so those brain cells of mine are starting to, the older you get, the harder it is to remember things. I can remember stuff from my childhood, like these mundane, stupid details that everybody teases me about. Like, oh my God, how do you remember that? That's such a trivial thing, but yet I remember it, but I sometimes can't remember what I had planned to do 5 minutes prior. Short-term, long-term memory thing. But so I just have a few more questions here before we go to public comment.
Sure.
If you have time, I don't know how your time is looking here. I want to be respectful of that.
I could probably go till about 8:10 my time, I would say.
Okay, so let's see. Let me pick through some of the more important questions then, because I do want to go to public comment where people can call in. I think this one probably should be addressed because I've heard varying opinions on the mixed audience option.
Yeah.
There was a major YouTuber, and I now can't remember who it was. Speaking of the whole memory thing, I don't know if it was Daryl Eves. He's a certified YouTube guy who does videos to help YouTubers become the best they can be. I don't know if it was him or I don't know. One of the other major YouTubers had an issue with the mixed audience thing, and he said, "Well, don't think for 1 second that YouTube didn't consider doing a mixed audience option." And his argument against it was that the mixed audience option would open itself up to a lot of abuse, that people could just bury their head in the sand and go, well, I'm just going to select mixed audience option because I don't know if it's one or the other. So I'm just going to select that one. And then it kind of puts YouTube in an awkward position, since it has to be one or the other, perhaps. I don't know. What do you think what's your opinion on the mixed audience option?
Well, the one that I was aware of was that Legal put up a video that said that there couldn't be a mixed audience option on YouTube. And I did a response video that said he was wrong. I love Legal stuff, but I thought he was wrong on that particular topic. And lawyers are often like that. This is the problem, right? They say, go consult with a lawyer, and, you can see us YouTubers fighting. It's one of those areas where I think YouTube could have easily had a mixed audience option. And mixed audience for this purpose, a lot of people get confused on this because it's not as easy as I have a mixed audience. It essentially means that if we go and we look at that paragraph that says the FTC thinks you are directed to children, and that subject matter and kids music and celebrities that are children appropriate and things like that. If you fall under what would be directed to children, you can essentially bounce out of it if you, it's unclear how the rule works here, but if you believe in your heart that you weren't targeting children, if your content really wasn't aimed at them, it was just attractive to them. And so I think the best way to read that is we can all concept that content could be only attractive to 12 and under, that there's stuff that is maybe nursery rhymes in a sing-song voice with a cartoon egg on a wall. Maybe that's not, no 13-year-old is going to love that. And there's stuff that the whole family can like.
Right.
But if you find yourself in that bucket, you can get out of COPPA, or at least the notice and consent requirements, which are the most significant, by not collecting data before someone self-verifies their age. You've seen this across the internet.
Right.
Age gate, right? I'm
Age
13
gates. Right.
YouTube could have implemented that. I'm not sure whether there's a technological barrier. I have significant doubts about that. What there is a barrier of is their business model. So they like to collect these persistent identifiers. They like to not care whether you're logged in, who's looking at what. And by putting the onus on the content creator to click for kids, not for kids, that leaves them in the FTC shadow. And the YouTube can say, hey, we gave them the box. They clicked the wrong box. What are you going to do? And if you give them the age gate, I'm not sure it's a liability question for YouTube. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. The main issue for YouTube is, a lot of their people are going to click that because, as we've already seen, a lot of people are risk averse on an FTC action, regardless of whether or not somebody like Hogue thinks it's a low exposure item. They're worried about that. They click mixed audience. And then the way YouTube would have to function is if you turn your channel to mixed audience, no one can watch any of your videos until they verify that they're over the age of 13. Some people are not going to do that. I'm not saying it's a ton of people, but some people on the margin are going to turn away from the YouTube service. And on the margin, when you're talking about a $4 or $5 billion enterprise, is money. It's real money.
Yeah.
Or even every 1 out of 100 people that say, forget it. And so YouTube said, nope, we don't want to put any friction in seeing our stuff. We don't want to have any variables there. So we're going to do it this way. And in my personal opinion, that's probably not a great kind of relationship to have with the people that are essentially making your site go. But that's the choice that they made. Mixed audience exception, I think, was available to them. They decided not to go with it. It wouldn't surprise me if this continues to blow up. They don't get the rule change that they want from the Federal Trade Commission, that you see a "we are listening" post and an age gate option at some point in the future.
Right. Gotcha. So shall we take some calls?
Sure. I got about 20 minutes.
Got about 20 minutes. Alrighty, so let's take some calls. I want to hear your questions and comments about this issue. Richard is still here with me, so you can feel free to ask him your questions or to voice your concerns. To call in, click on the link in the description to join the stream, and then click on the second link to read the instructions on how to join. Oh, I need to add that, actually. I don't have that second link in there. I'll do that in just a second. But make absolutely sure to disable or disconnect or cover up your camera if you don't want your face to show, because by default, your face will show unless you do something to disable your camera. Once you follow the instructions and you enter my broadcast studio, I will see that you're waiting in the queue. And when the time is right, I'll click on you to make you go live. So I'm going to take one caller at a time, and you'll have a maximum of 2 minutes if other people are waiting to join. I just ask that you guys keep your conversation civil and on topic, and please respect the 2-minute time limit. So let me go ahead and post that link. I've never done this before, so I'm.
I was actually just going to talk about how this is a pretty svelte and smooth program. I'm pretty impressed by this. So
I was hoping it would be. Okay, there we go, guys, in the sidebar chat. Now, Richard, I don't know if you can see. Oh, I keep hitting the microphone with my headphones. I've got a new microphone, too, so I'm dealing with new equipment, and
I love it.
A new format, and I keep, every time I turn my head, my headphones kind of bump my microphone a little bit. Now, Richard, I don't know if, can you see the sidebar chat?
I can't see it here, but whenever I do these for various podcasts, I always pull up the YouTube channel live. So I'm also watching that on the side.
Oh, okay. So there should be a sidebar chat to the YouTube live as well.
Yep.
Oh, you do see it. Okay, folks, I posted the link to the stream. So all you got to do is click on the link, follow the instructions to get here. But read the instructions. Oh, I wonder if I can post this in the description somehow, because I'm doing this on 2 different computers. Bear with me here, guys. Again, first time. I'm a rookie at doing this, more of a talk show format, but I figured this would be more listenable to people. And I have somebody saying this is so boring. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're not concerned about COPPA, then then I have to admit this would be a boring topic. But because it involves content creators and giving you the content that you guys want to see, this is definitely an exciting concept that we're having to deal with from the perspective of content creators. So, okay, do you guys see the? I don't know. Oh, I have somebody here actually. Okay, I have somebody dash cam waiting to join. I'm going to go ahead and add you. Okay, your microphone is muted, dash cam. So if you can go ahead and unmute your microphone, we'll be able to hear you. No? Okay. Okay, well, Richard and I will continue conversing until such time as your microphone is unmuted. Well, I guess we can address another question I had for you.
Sure.
Okay, your microphone is muted, dash cam. Oh, they're on. They're actually on. Unmute your microphone. We'll be able to hear you. And go ahead and mute your YouTube window because there's a bit of an echo. So dash cam, mute your YouTube window. We'll continue conversing until such time as your microphone is unmuted. Well, I guess we can address another question I had for you. Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of an echo there. Oh, they're on. They're actually on. Hello, Dashcam, are you with us? And go ahead and mute your YouTube. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if he's there. Try again. I'll try once more. Dashcam, are you there? Hello? I hear something. Are you there, Dashcam? Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of an echo. Okay, well. All right.
We tried.
Looks
like there might be a delay.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know if he's there. Try again. Dashcam, you there? Okay, Dashcam. I hear something. Are you there, hello. Dashcam? Are you with us? Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of an echo. Okay, well. All right. We tried. Okay, I had to kick him out, unfortunately, because of that echo, and we weren't hearing him. So if he wants to try again, you can go ahead and try calling it again. So I'm gonna keep putting the link in the sidebar chat. I'm not sure how to add the link to the description from where I'm at, but so one of the things I wanted to ask you is what unintended consequences do you see likely happening if the FTC moves forward with its current plan?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is you always have to question whether consequences are unintended if they are foreseeable, right?
Right.
And one of the things that is definitely going to happen, and as you said in your introduction, and that is happening now, is the fact that kids' content is going to be lighter on the ground than it was before.
Right.
Whether you liked it or not, and however you felt about data being collected from the kids, there was a lot of stuff, some of it bad, but some of it good, that was directed at the under 12 set and was available for YouTube on YouTube for free, however your prepositions you want to order them. And that's going to go away to some extent. Some of that's going to be because people are risk averse and that they don't want the Federal Trade Commission to come banging down their doors, whether or not that's likely. Some of it's going to be because even if they don't care about that, they know where their audience is targeted and they are going to hit for kids. And if you're not appearing on playlists and people can't comment on your stuff, what's going to happen to it? And certainly the YouTube algorithm itself uses some of that stuff. And one of the reasons I started my channel in the first place was to kind of try to figure out how the algorithm, what it was doing and what kind of data people were getting, because I have a number of clients that deal with YouTube and some other kind of high-level analytical data. And there is absolutely 100% no question. I know you don't need to hear this from me, that the difference between a video that gets caught in the algorithm and not is exponential
Right.
in terms of viewership. And I've only been doing this for a year or so. I still have I have no idea why some videos YouTube gets excited about and some it doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works.
But I think it's pretty clear that if you don't have that playlist, if you don't have the comments, if you don't have the same behavioral advertising, I can't imagine behind the scenes the algorithm isn't going to say, no, if we've got another choice, not you.
Right. Oh, we do have a caller.
Okay,
We have a
great.
different one, so we're gonna try again here. Under the Sea. Thank you for joining us. You're live.
Excited about and some it doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works.
But
Under the Sea, are you there?
if you don't have that playlist, if you don't have the comments, if you don't have the same behavioral
Hello?
I can't imagine behind the scenes.
Starting to wonder if the problem is this service I'm using here.
Well, I think so, because I'm looking at the YouTube video and they haven't been added on the screen yet. I think it's like a full 30 seconds behind.
It's a 30 seconds delay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's there. I've got him in the stream. Under the Sea, are you there? Oh, that's odd. I had the same problem with the previous. Starting to wonder if the problem is this. Yeah. So I don't know. That's interesting.
Added on the screen yet. I think it's like a full 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll try one more time. Under the Sea, are you there? Yeah. Hello, hello. I've got him in the stream. Under the Sea. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to remove him from the studio unless we can hear him. Had the same problem with the previous. Okay. Well. Okay. Could have been the same person actually from before trying again. I don't know. Huh. Like I said, it's my first time. That's interesting.
It's what I get. I was complimentary of the software because I've done a couple of these and this was the smoothest entrance that I had. So it is what it is.
Oh, wow. Have you used StreamYard before?
This one's new to me. No, for the most part. When I started doing these and people were interested in randomly hearing from a lawyer on YouTube, it was through Google Hangouts, and that has gone away.
Yes.
And so I've done a couple with what amounts to a screen grab of either a Skype or a lot of Discord conversations.
Okay.
So, I'm always interested in seeing what the best tech for this kind of thing is.
Well, StreamYard was actually written to, coded to be as much like Google Hangouts as possible, but with a few extra bells and whistles. And I've used it once before, and I have to say I'm really impressed with StreamYard and how much it does resemble Google Hangouts, but there is more functionality to it.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem with it. I think on the last one I may have had I may have had 2 or 3 other guests at the same time, and I didn't have whatever problem I'm having now. See, okay, Under the Sea is in my broadcast studio, and it said his device wasn't connected, so that may be why. But okay, I just actually bumped myself out of the stream.
I was gonna say, I think it's possible I took over the broadcast for a second there. I didn't say anything.
Oh no, what happened was I accidentally hit I've got this this ergonomic mouse controller, and it has a button on it in a very weird place, and if I accidentally bump the button, it actually functions as a back button, which is really stupid. I wish there was a way I could deprogram it from doing that, but it's like bumped me out of important things I was doing, but it helps my wrists from carpal tunnel. So I guess it's kind of, you take the bad with the good, I suppose.
Sure.
Okay, I do have another caller. This one is absolutely a different caller. I recognize him from he's a fan of my videos, so I'm going to go ahead and add him. Buster Mobile, welcome to the stream. You are live. It's like bumped me out of important things hello? Doing, but it helps the risks from hello, Buster Mobile, are you there? I guess it's kind of, you take the bad with the good. Oh, dear. Sure. Okay. Buster Mobile? This one is absolutely a different caller. I recognize him from... Okay. He's a fan of my videos, so I'm going to... Okay. Yeah, again, I'm not sure that may actually have been the same person that was trying before. I don't know. It's just, it allows you to pick a different screen name, whatever screen name you want when you join, but I'm not sure why that was not working. Okay, I'm going to try one more time for Buster Mobile. Buster Mobile, hello? Okay. Oh, he said it's not him. Okay. Okay. Interesting. So let me actually get to another question then, since I can't seem to add these callers to here, or they're having technical difficulties themselves. So do you think this enforcement action will really do much to protect children?
Well, I mean, I think philosophically it all depends on whether you think collecting persistent identifiers on kids is an ultra bad thing or not.
Right.
Like I said in the middle of the video, on a conceptual level, as the father of 2 young daughters, I don't have an objection to you can't mess with my kids' data without my consent.
Right.
That being said, I certainly don't think it is a big enough kind of affront to justice to burn the internet down around. So it's one of those things where, like most legal questions, it's about balancing. And I think directing COPPA at true website operators is probably still fine. Extending that out to people that don't have the toggles and the levers of the behind the scenes of a website, in my opinion, is too much.
Right. Okay. Oh, got a little pop-up here. What's that telling me to do? Okay. So, but before you go, because I know you said, I think you got like, what?
Yeah, I got about 5 minutes.
5 more minutes. What can you tell content creators that might ease their concerns? I know you touched on a few things that could ease their concerns, but what can you tell people that might ease their concerns a little bit about this enforcement action coming up?
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat that there are no guarantees, one of the things that my clients come to me and ask a lot is that kind of question. We're gonna make a tax filing. We're gonna do something with our securities that is, maybe someone somewhere could find is a problem. What are the chances something really bad happens to me? And in my opinion, when we talk about this kind of stuff, they are certainly going to at first kind of bite at the apple, aim for that low-hanging fruit. They're going to aim for somebody that looks malicious, that looks bad, that is easy to go after, that has a lot of money. And one of the things I would tell people is, if that's not you, and I'm sorry, PewDiePie, is that if that's not you, you're very likely to have a warning bell type system. If the Federal Trade Commission really did decide to be the dragon that ate YouTube, you are very likely to have notions in the news that is what's happening before they get to you. So I think I always recommend follow the rules if you can. If you are in the middle area and you think legitimately in your heart that you are not made only for people that are 12 and under, I've had this conversation with folks that do, theme park videos. And they say, kids love theme parks. It's absolutely true. I love a theme park, though, and I'm 40. And if you believe in your heart that this wasn't made for kids, and my latest video talks about made for kids is not maybe what you think of it as. A lot of people read made for kids and not made for kids as whether or not it's appropriate for kids.
Yes.
Appropriateness is not the question. Direction is the question. Did I direct this thing at kids that are 12 and under? If I didn't direct it at kids at 12 and under, and with the additional legal caveat that if it turns out that kids 12 and under also just love your stuff, that's a different question. You still might have to hit that box. If you didn't direct it at that, and it's family friendly or whatever, you should be able to hit not for kids. The Federal Trade Commission is pretty unlikely to come after you in the early days, definitely. And you'll probably have an alarm system set up in the world for when the Federal Trade Commission starts trying to enforce these things. I have my doubts that actually there's a political appetite to do much of this at all. But if they did, it's going to be major actors, and it's going to be people that have decided to make a stand with millions of subscribers and only put up the equivalent of Barney videos and say not for kids and say, come at me.
Right.
Federal Trade Commission might do that. The people that are law-abiding, that are trying to do what's right, have a lot of defenses in place. And the Federal Trade Commission knows that. The last thing I will say on this is that, the penalty that people have been talking about, the one that really freaks people out, the $40,000, we already talked about the fact that it's going to be smaller depending on your revenue. The other kind of aspect of that is it's a penalty that's designed for willful and intentional breach of the law, that you deliberately tried to breach it. The vagueness here actually works in content creators' benefit, right? That if they're trying and some Federal Trade Commissioner decides that they're on the wrong side of that in the future, it's going to be very difficult to really enforce something bad against them, because as long as you don't have an email that says, "Mwahaha, I'm going to screw over the Federal Trade Commission," and they can go find it in Discovery, as long as you are legitimately trying to comply and they just disagree with you, it's very difficult to bring the full force of the federal government on you.
Gotcha.
YouTube got burned because they had 100 emails that said, yes, we know it's aimed at kids under 8. Don't worry, COPPA doesn't apply, and all this stuff, when it definitely applied to YouTube. That's never been in doubt. The question is whether it applied to the content creators themselves.
Right. Gotcha. Before you go, if you have one more second, David Oliver in the sidebar chat here is asking, is it your opinion that the spirit of the law applies here?
Well, I would say that the law is designed to protect kids. If, like so many kind of legal questions, if you find yourself on the wrong side of a cease and desist letter or a complaint in a federal lawsuit, you're going to be better off if the story you can tell is that you were a good faith actor. This is all kind of muddled, middle of the road legal statutory analysis. And so if you look like a bad actor, if you look like you have what the law might call unclean hands, we have a lot of metaphors in the law,
right?
Then the judge is more likely to find you wanting. If you can show, Judge, I had 20 emails. I listened to this hour-long discussion with this random lawyer called Hogue, and he talked to me about COPPA. I really wanted to comply. And you can put that in your memo and say, look, I tried, and the Federal Trade Commission just disagreed. The judge is going to look at it, and hopefully, I can't guarantee anything for any given judge in 5 years from now, is going to look at it and say, yeah, you tried, you fell on the wrong side, change the boxes, and this is done.
Yeah.
And that's the most likely scenario for the middle of the road. What you heard from the Federal Trade Commission talking to Creek Craft or whoever went up to Washington is, yeah, they're not terribly interested in going after the middle of the road people that are trying to comply. One of the reasons for that is politically it looks terrible. If you've got somebody that's got a big audience, that has a lot of fans, that is doing their darndest to comply with even ridiculous rules, you don't want to be the federal agency that comes and drops the hammer on them. It's easy to drop the hammer on YouTube. Whether you like the service or not, nobody actually likes the tech giants in terms of publicity and PR. Right. I mean, that's just one of the easiest kind of things to go after when you're attacking things in public. Right. So you can go after YouTube, you can go after Twitter, you can go after Facebook, whoever. They're faceless corporations. It's very easy. I say this as a corporate lawyer, so I know this. I know this land in terms of communications. But when you try to go after the self-made content creator that built herself up from the bootstraps by being joyful about Legos and gets on, MSNBC or Fox News or wherever with her story about how the Federal Trade Commissioner put her and her mother under a bridge, that's not going to be great for the FTC.
Right. Yeah. All right.
So, yeah, I do have to go, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate your participation in this.
I appreciate the invite. Absolutely.
And I love your videos, and I encourage everyone listening to check out your videos.
Yeah, youtube.com/Hoeglaw. I do not operate that website. YouTube does, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming in tonight, and we'll see how this whole thing plays out as time goes on.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. Merry Christmas to you, by the way. All right, so that was Richard Hogue of Hogue Law. He was nice enough to come in here and uh, share his opinions on all this. As I said, he's dissected the law in great detail. I mean, if anybody knows about COPPA more than anybody, it's him. So check out his videos. I need to go to a brief break. I have bad drivers of the Bay Area waiting to call in. I'll take his call after the break, but I do have to take a brief break. So you guys hang tight. I'll be right back with you. Okay, we are back. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. This has been an interesting discussion about COPPA and how this could affect us content creators. So I have Bad Drivers of the Bay Area waiting in the wings here. So I'm going to go ahead and add him in.
Clock out.
Hello, Drivers of the Bay Area.
Before I leave, though.
Oh, you're live.
Hello, you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can hear you just fine. How are you tonight?
So I don't know what was going on with those other people, but
Yeah, I think it was actually the same person. It kept coming up as the same name. I just realized that anybody waiting, I can actually see their name.
okay.
When they're because they have to log in before they can actually join the stream.
Gotcha.
So it's like the same person.
Ah.
So
Okay.
yeah. So what are your thoughts on this?
Oh man, it's just from the moment I heard about it, there was all the doom and gloom. Everyone was thinking, "Oh, we got to delete our channels," and it's going to be doomsday for everyone. But the more
Right.
information's come out, it definitely seems like channels like ours were definitely not going to be affected.
Right. I think we're going to be okay, honestly.
And just the whole point of it is just so pointless, really. I mean, it all comes down to parenting and making sure that if your kid's not 13, they're not on YouTube. I mean, that's
Well, yeah, exactly. Because like I said earlier, I do know of a lot of parents that do not allow their children to go online by themselves, and they aren't allowed mobile devices. And it could be that simple, I would think. But we're in such a techie era. There are some parents that can't imagine not allowing their kid a device, and so then it complicates things. It's
right.
like, well, I'm not going to have any restrictions on you, so you could just do what you want. And sometimes, so like one thing we didn't talk about was the age gate. Well, actually, no, Richard did mention the age gate a little bit, but because YouTube does have an age gate, you do have to be 13
Right.
in order to in order to have an account. But the problem is you are allowed to watch videos without creating an account. So there is no age gate necessarily for people watching our videos. But then at the same time, the FTC, if they're going to come after us, they have to be able to prove that we knew we had 13-year-olds watching our videos. So we have our analytics to look at our audience, the basics of our audience, but we may not know if there are actually children watching our videos, because not everyone who creates an account is truthful about their age when they create an account. And I don't think the analytics has any way of showing us, if the viewers who aren't logged in, what age they are.
Right. And especially if they're not logged in, I don't understand how they can show that. How they can prove that if they actually took somebody to court.
And I don't. Yeah, exactly. Maybe in time they'll realize how complicated it is to come after some content creators upon realizing how we really don't know what our demographic is, especially as it pertains to those who aren't logged in. I mean, YouTube could have a better system, maybe, where in order to even use YouTube at all, you have to have an account.
Yeah. That seems like that would be
that would be one way of doing it.
Because if you're not logged in, are they even getting any kind of information? How much could they possibly get off of you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do know that. Yeah, I do know that they use persistent identifiers. So even if you're not logged in, I'm sure now persistent identifiers. That's something that Mr. Hogue mentioned. Persistent identifier is like a cookie that tracks your online browsing history, so that it can then target relevant ads to show you. And so I believe it still does that even when you're not logged in. So children can potentially, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that it still does. I think it still does utilize persistent identifiers if you're not logged in. But then again, YouTube was forced to comply with COPPA, so that may have changed. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. And then, of course, my other question is, like you guys were saying earlier, I'm also a father of two kids, and yeah,
Yes.
they want to make sure that they're not giving away personal information, but as
Right.
what they watch and what they like and what they are into, like, is that really that big of a deal if they're collecting that data? Like, well, what do I care if
Right. And that's
it knows that my kids like Tangled and Peppa Pig? Who cares? Like,
right.
how is that protecting them?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of comes back to the responsibility of data collection. Like, who does it, should it be on us content creators? Should it be on YouTube? Should it be on the government to
Yeah.
crack down on these platforms? Or should it be the parent that in the first place, maybe again, we wouldn't need this legislation if, you know, parents, this is a common argument being raised right now
Mhm.
that
Concept,
this,
people actually parent.
yeah, this wouldn't be an issue if parents,
Yeah.
had just exercised authority over what their kids watch, what they do online in the first place, and then we wouldn't need this legislation.
I agree.
So, and I think there's a lot of validity in that argument. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm going to hop off. I just wanted to get on and make sure there weren't any technical difficulties. I'm actually
Yeah.
at work, so.
Oh, okay. I understand why I mean, you're welcome to stay longer if you want. There's nobody else waiting in the wings to come on. So you're welcome to stay longer if you wish, but you're at work. So
Yeah, I'm at work. I'm going to
I'll leave
actually
that up to
head
you.
home now. So.
Well, good luck with the bad drivers on the way home.
Oh yeah, thanks. I'm sure I'll have plenty of clips for my next video. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded with the holidays. I just needed a break. So.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, with the holidays being here, there are probably a lot more bad drivers on the roads right now with their Christmas shopping and all that.
A stockpile of clips. So I'll be back after the first of the year with some more content for sure.
And there you go. All righty. Well, thank you for coming in, and
Yeah.
I'll have you, I'll have you again on a future stream.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm glad the StreamYard's working out for you. I was glad I was able to find that and you're able to use it.
Yeah, it was pretty easy for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hop on
Super.
in.
I'm not sure what that other person's problem was, but
I don't know. Yeah, they must not have had a microphone connected or something.
yeah.
That's my best guess.
Yeah, because I'm just on my work Mac and everything's all built in. So, and I just turned the camera off, so that wasn't a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. All right, cool.
All right, man.
All right. Well, thank you for being here, and have a Merry Christmas.
You do the same. Happy New Year.
Stay tuned for my Christmas lights video
Oh, sweet. I'll have to
next
look.
week. Yeah, sometime. All righty.
All right, take it easy.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. All right. So, yeah, I mean, it comes back to, what we let our kids see. It seems to work well with some parents, restricting their kids' online activity. Not handing them a device until they're responsible enough. And other parents don't mind, and that some parents, like he said, I don't mind some of my child's data being collected. And then, of course, that comes back to the consent part. With COPPA, we're not. Websites aren't allowed to collect data without the consent of the parent. So I don't know. There could be. I'm not an expert on any of this, but there could be another way of having dealt with this without. I don't know. I mean, you can't not have regulation on things. Our society wouldn't function without things being regulated. But a lot of people are questioning: is this an overreach of the federal government? Is this excessive regulation? So that's going to continue to be a debate the law itself as it's written. I think what Mr. Hogue was trying to get at is that the law itself is fine. On the face of it, it looks good. But it's the application of which is problematic, and how they're going to enforce it seems to be the sticking point here. So again, if any of you want to call in with your questions or comments, I'm once again going to place the link to the stream in the sidebar chat. So I'm going to say, click on this link to call in. Make sure that your video camera is disabled or covered up or disconnected, because if you join, it will by default add the video stream as well. So if you don't want your face to show, just make sure your video camera is disconnected or covered up somehow. Or you can pose your questions in the sidebar chat. Let me just look through my notes here and see. So we kind of talked about some of the unintended consequences of the COPPA enforcement, and how, like I said before, if you just set all your videos for kids, you're going to lose out on advertising revenue. It seems like an easy solution, but then you're going to miss out on advertising revenue. Some people, it may not matter, because you may not be able to monetize your videos anyway. So that may not affect people who aren't concerned about making money. Then just set it for kids. Then you're safe. And as Richard pointed out, there is a deeply embedded feature. I don't know where it is personally, but if you select the type of ads to be displayed, he said you might be safe. You may be immune, but I don't remember where that is. Raven, it's called contextual ads. And those are ads that are geared toward, they don't rely on data collection from the viewer. They are ads that are relevant to the video. So for example, when I upload a bad driver's video of people being stupid on the road, some of the ads that may play next to my videos when you're watching might be, say, auto parts, like an auto parts store. And I always think of that O'Reilly's commercial. I mean, that song just gets stuck in your head. Oh, 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 O'Reilly's auto parts, that sort of thing. So it might be like an O'Reilly's auto parts ad that shows up next to that. And that's a contextual ad. That's an ad that's relevant to the video, and that did not rely on collecting your data, your browsing history. But a good portion of the ads out there are ads that are based on your browsing history. Like, did you go look at lingerie on Victoria's Secret? Well, that might show up on my video as an ad when you're watching, because you went to Victoria's Secret and you were looking at all that sexy underwear. And those personalized ads, so it goes by different terms. Some call it personalized ads. I don't remember some of the other terms used for that. But those personalized ads that rely on tracking your web surfing history, those are the ones that are cut when you select for kids. And, then you lose out. And people can't comment. People can't, you can't add that to a playlist. And it may affect its searchability as well, which can hurt your views. So that's the position that a lot of us are in. right now. Kind of a bad position to be in. YouTube, in all fairness, YouTube is in a sticky position too. I mean, ultimately, I think we can all agree that none of this would happen if YouTube had just followed the rules to begin with and not violated the law. I mean, this still could have happened if some other platform had violated the law, but the FTC is starting with YouTube, and there's talk that it will eventually, the enforcement action could eventually progress to other platforms. Because remember, COPPA applies to every website that exists. So it's not just YouTube that must comply. It's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's every site that's out there. It's just that they are focusing their effort right now on YouTube and content creators. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with, I don't know if any of you have been following J-House Law. It's, what's his name? Is it Jeremy Hill? Jeremy, give me 1 second so I can look it up here. There's another attorney who, Jeremy Johnston, excuse me. I don't know where I got Hill from. Jeremy Johnston has, well, yeah. So he's got a YouTube channel called J-House Vlogs. J-House Vlogs. And then he started a channel, a secondary channel called J-House Law. And he was talking about, what's going on lately. And Richard Hogue, my guest earlier tonight on this show, talked actually to Jeremy on this issue. And, there were some things they disagreed on, but that's typical when you get multiple lawyers speaking to each other about, speaking to each other on the law, because there's a lot of subjectivity, a lot of room for interpretation with a lot of laws. But Jeremy Johnston, J-House Law, he actually went to Washington to speak with commissioners, and he hasn't actually posted any videos lately on this. But he also started a petition. And I don't know if that petition is still active. Let me see if it still is, and then I can post a link to that petition in the sidebar chat here. But he, last time I checked, I think the petition was up to like 900,000 signatures. This was like a week ago. So it's probably going to be higher than that now. But there's a petition to, I'm going to read this to you. It says, YouTube viewers and creators petition the Federal Trade Commission to clarify and reconsider the new Children's Online Privacy Protection Act regulations on YouTube creators. Shutting off personalized ads on creators' content will, hang on, I just got a pop-up that covered up part of the text I'm reading off of his petition page. Shutting off personalized ads on creators' content will cause more harm than good, especially for children. Quality family-friendly content will shrink, which is what I was saying earlier, while more mature content will grow, yet kids will still be watching. And this is what I was saying earlier. The FTC should not expand COPPA regulations for content creators. Broadening the definition of child-directed to include child-attractive would force many more creators to turn off personalized ads. As a result, even more quality content will dry up, and the mature and extreme content will fill the platform. We can't write to the FTC anymore because they have closed their forum. But it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. So anyway, I won't continue reading the whole thing on the petition, but I do encourage all of you to sign the petition. So I'm going to post a link right now in the sidebar chat to this petition. Okay. There it is, guys. That link I just posted is a link to the petition. Please sign it. And I see some of you already have signed the petition. So good. Well, there it is. All right. So we'll see if we can utilize our democracy to get this, get things kind of evened out here a little bit. But yeah, I would say watch the press conference. Oh, you know what? I'll post a link to that too, so you guys can see it. The press conference we were talking about, it was the FTC press conference. It is 45 minutes long. It's long. I don't know if you guys are going to want to watch the whole thing, but it is interesting to go back and watch it. I'm just trying to find it here. It's like 45 minutes long. Oh, here it is. I found it. So it's funny because that video got 23 likes and 180 dislikes. I mean, that just goes to demonstrate the way people feel about this. It just doesn't seem fair that they are coming after us. Evening, Chris. Again, anybody's welcome to join this discussion here. Okay, that link I just posted there in the sidebar just now is the FTC press conference over the week. Over the summer. Yes. So YouTube, has to listen to the public. They're caught between us and the FTC. They're not in an easy position either. Again, they could have not gotten us into this mess if they had just followed the law to begin with. But we're here now. We can't go back. But they are caught in an awkward position. So they have liability too. There's a lot that they could be doing, to make things easier on content creators. But, but they've got their own liability to look at as well. So I don't know. But at least you can rest assured that you're probably not going to get a $42,000 fine. The fines, and I think one of the other things that Mr. Hogue was saying earlier is that, the fines are based on the ability to pay them and the egregiousness of the violation. That's things they have to take into consideration. And also, they have to prove that you knew that you were in violation and that you had knowledge that you had a significant child viewing segment of viewers. Right, that's true. COPPA has, I'm just reading the sidebar here. COPPA has only ever invoked COPPA a couple of times and never against an individual. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if they even will. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But they're probably going to go after the big ones first. And once they do that, if it's battled out in court, then there could be a precedence that's set. Case law, as they call it. That may either help or hurt us. Now that I think about it, I want to say that there have been other cases where they have sided with, not the content creator per se, because I don't think this has ever come up with YouTube, but with users online. Yeah, and I'm just trying to remember what that was about, but I seem to remember hearing about something where judges have historically been sympathetic toward what would be the equivalent of a content creator because they get it. They know how it works. And one of the criticisms of this whole enforcement action is that the FTC commissioners have been fairly ignorant about how anything works on YouTube. They don't know. They don't know anything about it. They don't understand how it works, that we don't actually operate the site. And this came up in conversations between major YouTubers and the FTC commissioners where in personal conversations between the two. And there have been a lot of them now. And some of the YouTubers were telling us that, hey, these commissioners, when I talked to them, they didn't know how any of this actually works. They're clueless. They don't know. They don't know how the ads work. They had no idea that we don't actually place these ads. We don't actually collect this data. And that there was a lot of ignorance. And that they didn't even know that YouTube was going to implement this AI system to automatically detect what's for kids and what isn't. Of course, again, this detection method I wouldn't trust it, to get things right. It's an AI system, so it's bound to come up with false positives or false negatives. So you got to watch for that. But they weren't even aware of those things. And then there were a couple others that indicated that the FTC commissioners knew more than what other people thought they did. Then again, these content creators are talking with different commissioners. They might not even be talking to all the same commissioners. Some are younger than others, but a lot of the older ones don't seem to understand how YouTube works. And I'm seeing a lot of comments in these videos, especially on the FTC press conference video. I'm seeing a lot of comments that say, "Okay, boomer. Okay, boomer." Because there's always the joke about how quote unquote old people don't understand technology. So you got all these okay boomer jokes going on there. So the AI isn't an auto blocker. Excuse me. It's more of a filter. So it just tags your videos as what it thinks they are. I would imagine you can go in and change that. If it automatically flags your video as one thing or the other, I'm pretty sure you can go in and change that. Don't quote me on it because this is all new stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to see how this all plays out. 2020 is going to be a very interesting time, I think, for all of us. A lot of people have been saying it, that the golden age of YouTube is over. And I would kind of have to agree with that. The golden age of YouTube is over. We've already gone past the peak of YouTube, the best days of YouTube. I think those are gone. And what I mean by that is opportunity for creators to not just be the best they can be, but make the most of the platform. And this is something that we just seem to be past. Not just because of this COPPA enforcement thing, but YouTube started back in 2006. I think it was 2006. Somebody, if I'm wrong on that, correct me, but I think it was 2006. And then we joined in 2010, I think. Yeah. But, started with just a handful of people, handful of content creators, as any new thing would, as any new platform would. And then as time went on, the platform grew, and it actually grew beyond the scope that YouTube envisioned it to. It became a lot more than what YouTube imagined it to be. And then they were bought out by Google at some point. And I don't think in the beginning it was really envisioned to be a money-making platform, but it certainly became that, because once Google bought it and once they had a YouTube partnering program where we could monetize our videos, it became a lucrative platform to make a living. And a lot of people have. And of course, when things started booming, no relation to the boomers joke earlier, but once it started booming, that's when things started getting more complicated. So then you had, when something grows faster than you can regulate it, or faster than you can really plan for, then you start acquiring more rules. So the corporation that's running it, needs to set some more guidelines and boundaries and rules. So then they come up with their what is it? Their community guidelines. What you can or can't do on this platform. Okay. Then they slowly start punishing people that violate that. That's fine. I mean, you got to have some rules. You can't just have the Wild West in a way of doing things. But then fast forward several more years, and then we start getting into like 2000. I don't know. When was it that we started having these ad apocalypses? I think it was around 2014, maybe ish, somewhere around there. Then the advertisers started getting a little antsy and fussy about what their ads were being shown alongside. So then they started putting the pressure on YouTube to enact more rules about, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that if you want to be monetized. Okay, so this was kind of where this kind of marks the beginning of the decline of the golden age of YouTube. So then your advertisers start getting fussy, and then YouTube employs an AI system to detect words that they deem should be blacklisted, where if you have those words spoken or typed in your title or description, that you can't monetize your videos anymore, that you have to then select for a manual review if you disagree with the demonetization of your video. Okay, so then you got that. And I think at some point they kind of eased up on that a little bit, and then we had another adpocalypse and more stringent guidelines for YouTube and what you can monetize and what you can't. And it just seems like it kept going on and on and on. Almost to the point of ridiculousness. Well, maybe to the point of ridiculousness at some point. It's like you just all these rules and rules and rules on top of rules, which again, you have to have some rules. There's no question there, but it becomes a question of what's too much, what's overreach, you know? And it seems like we went through a sort of like a YouTube apocalypse last year. I can't remember exactly what it was. And now we've got this COPPA thing, which I think is the big one. I think it's the most major challenge that content creators now have to deal with. This one here. So not only that, but I think YouTube just came out with another revision of their guidelines and a bigger threat of demonetization where, well, they're cracking down on hate speech, which is good. There's some speech that you don't want, that I certainly wouldn't want. But they're taking it even a step further. If you really read down into their terms, even if you don't violate their rules, they can still demonetize you if you have a pattern of coming close to breaking the rules, which is weird. I think that's a little strange. It should only be demonetized if you actually break the rules, not if you are almost there but not actually there. It's weird. I don't know. I don't get it. So there's that now that we have to deal with, and I think that took effect or is starting to take effect back on December the 10th. That actually may change the way we do our videos, our narration. So our narration may change a little bit because of these new guidelines. So I'm going to wrap up here, but let me just say that, even if the FTC doesn't come after us individually as creators, we still have YouTube to worry about. YouTube did make it clear that if YouTube thought we were in violation of kids or not kids by misdesignating what our videos are, that they could actually suspend or shut down our channels. So even if we don't have the FTC to worry about, we still have YouTube to worry about. Unless anything changes here going forward. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys, we are out of time. I just want to thank Mr. Hogue for being here earlier tonight to lend his professional insight into all of this. And I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in, for Bad Drivers of the Bay Area for calling in. And I hope you all can find some peace in all of this. Life goes on, and unfortunately, we are forced to adapt to it. Well, maybe fortunately, too, because once you adapt to it, things are smoother if you adapt to things rather than not adapting to things. But it's still unfortunate, some of the stuff we're having to go through here. It'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. So anyway, if all goes well, we should have another video coming out this Friday, which will be Deleted Scenes compilation number 8. Those are all dashcam clips that did not make it into our normal compilations. Also, sometime around Christmas or Christmas Eve, haven't decided which one yet, we'll be releasing a lovely video of Christmas lights. We had a bunch of viewers request that we do a video like last year where we showcase our area's Christmas lights. And one person asked if we could do it on a night where it's not raining. Well, I'm happy to report that the night we went to see Christmas lights, it was not raining, but it was cold. And we did something a little different than last time, so check it out. I'm not sure yet if we're going to have a Bad Drivers compilation video for you the Friday of Christmas, which would be the 27th. Not sure if we're going to do have a video for you then. We'll see. The holidays have been quite hectic. And in all honesty, I kind of need a break. So again, we'll see on that. All right. Until next time, guys. And have yourself a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And be safe out there on the roads. Behave yourselves. And we'll see you again soon. All right. Bye, guys. You're listening to Bad Drivers Caught on Dashcam, your continuous source of epic driving fails paired with intriguing commentary. We also put out the occasional live stream where we talk about various driving-related topics and anything else relating to the dashcam community and the world of YouTube. I am your host, Napa, a nickname coined from back when our dashcam channel was called Bad Drivers of Napa Valley. We put out 2 to 4 videos per month and you don't want to miss them.